Hey everyone, it's David Irwin from David Irwin Design here, graphic design firm. I'm a graphic designer, and today's video I'm going to show you how to create this poster, which I created in Photoshop for my 30-day poster challenge. The reason that we're doing this one is because it utilizes a technique that I learned from a YouTube video, Nathaniel Dodson over at tutvid.com. This one I think was just more concise. It helped give the message of the poster and deliver that message in a far easier to understand way, and it just fit in with the theme a lot more. There's a couple of things that I think you will need to gather first. You can find at unsplash.com. Here it is. We're going to jump into Photoshop and begin the tutorial. Okay, so I lied slightly there. We're actually going to change the sequence up a little bit, and we're going to go to unsplash.com and pull out some assets. I'm looking for a skull and I believe a roll of film, or a piece with a roll of film on it. The skull is sitting on the top of a thing in a car, and the film is just sort of hanging in the air. And then we'll jump into Photoshop with those assets. So now we are jumping into Photoshop, and we are going to choose our resolution. As you can see on the screen, I've chosen 3940 and 2560. We want this to be a high-res image, so we're going to make it 300 pixels per inch. You want it to be a 16-bit file so that you can get, it's just nice and high-res. I'm choosing a nice soft brush here, making it 500 pixels wide or round or whatever, and this allows me to paint on the canvas nice and big, but it does leave enough white space that I can see what I'm doing and when I'm painting on with the later colors. I'm opening up the background layer, which was white, and I'm going to paint the first color on that. And as I add color or different tones, different values of the same color, orange in this case, I'm going to add those to a new layer. It's important to remember to do that because later on, in this section, we are going to add a Gaussian blur to each of these layers, and it'll give it that nice, soft, different faded sort of everything blending into one another effect that you will see in the background of the poster that you will have at the end. So I'm just gonna do this. You'll see that I'm adding the different colors to the different layers, and I make this mistake all the time. I don't add a new layer, and it turns out that I'm posting in the same layer. It gets very frustrating. Thankfully, the new version of Adobe Photoshop CC has the ability to do multi rewinds, multi undos, I guess is the best way to say it. And that's a feature that was in Illustrator. I think it's 250 backspaces or undos that you can do. So that's a great little feature, and I'm very glad that they ported it over. So now that we have our color added to each layer, we are going to blur them together so that we have a nice faded background, or at least a nice blurred, blended background. We're going to add a Gaussian blur of 300 pixels to each of the layers, and we are then going to duplicate the layers, and to the duplicates we are going to add a second layer of Gaussian blur. I chose 300 pixels again, and it gives it a nice blended, it sort of all becomes one color, but when you look at it really closely, you can see the different values come through. I liked that. If you do want to see more about that, you can go over to youtube.com/tutvid and do the tutorial from Nathaniel Dodson. That's actually where I picked up this technique. So he does a great explanation of what this is for, and you can go and see this on its own in a nice little package. Yeah. The final section of the background is going to be adding a slight noise to the background color. This just gives a more realistic view of the color when you're looking at it. It's very slight, it's only 0.5, and as I said, Nathaniel Dodson has a great explanation on that if you go over and watch his tutorial. So now that we have finished our background layer, we are going to bring the assets that we gathered earlier today from unsplash.com over into this picture. We're going to add them to their own layer so that we can use the blending options to make them pop. With the film layer, I'm bringing it over and placing it in hard light. So now that we've actually finished placing that image of the film, we are going to create the green rectangle that acts as the frame for the skull and the type for the poster. The type is actually going to sit on top and the frame is going to sit in this green rectangle. It's going to be outlined, not filled, so that is important. Make sure that you have outline selected and not your fill selected when you create it. And for the thickness, this is actually something that I've decided differently each time. As you can see from the screen, you can see what I've chosen, but this doesn't necessarily have to be the one that you choose if you are doing this along with me. So once that square rectangle is set, we are going to go over to our skull and we're going to use the quick selection tool to quickly select this, cut it or copy it and paste it into our poster file. The next step is to take the skull and turn it into a nice shade of yellow or orange or whatever shade you want. We're going to do that by clipping a hue and saturation filter onto this layer. And you can see that from the tutorial. I've done that. Made the skull a bright yellow, up the saturation of that yellow, and setting it within the poster itself. So for the text, you're just going to choose the text that you want to choose. You're going to align it with the center of the poster. Make sure that you're aligning it to the center of the canvas, not the center of the selection. And then you're just going to line it up, place it at the bottom of the green square as I show in the tutorial. Once that's set and done, you're pretty much done. that's it. That's the tutorial. I hope you got some good information from it at least, or you enjoyed it. Do let me know what you think. And many thanks to Nathaniel Dodson for the tutorial that I used to actually figure out this, the technique for the background. I'll link that in the description. I'll link my website, a couple of other things. If you do want to follow me on anything, you can find me on _Dave Irwin on Twitter, or DI Design SCO. It's DI Design SCO.